All right, mixed reality. I'm just going to start with a quick question and ask the room here just to check in. How many people here have had a HoloLens demo? All right, so about 35% or so. So we've got some people who've had experiences, some that haven't. We will invite you upstairs. I know Theorem, who is an ISV partner, has some HoloLens up in the VR space. So I'd recommend, if you haven't had a chance, to at least get a chance to check that out today. So I'm just going to step back for a couple of seconds and talk about the ambition that we have from a Microsoft perspective around mixed reality. And Martin kind of has teed up a big part of that around the superpowers. And when we start thinking about what we do as humans, we're really creators. We dream in essentially 3D, and we dream about how we can evolve. Whether it is in the area of education, medical science, whether it is dreaming about as an architect, creating new buildings that have never been done before. City planners, we are creators by nature. And technology, well, it's been great over the last couple of generations that we've had. It's still at the very ground floor because we essentially have to take our dreams and what we think about wanting to do and actually go tell technology how we want that to happen. And there's tremendous inefficiencies in that process to be able to do that. So what our ambition is to make it far easier for us to be able to take the entire real world around us and then to be able to insert digital objects into our field of view. Because when you do that, you have the ultimate computer, essentially. It's really limitless in terms of what we are able to do. So it's the blending of the real and the digital world that we look at in terms of mixed reality. So I'm going to go quickly through this just to help kind of ground. In this visual that you will see, everything in gray is the real world. This lady here is sitting there wearing a HoloLens type of device as an example. And in this world, what we were able to do is bring in a digital object, such as a person, and in this case, it's an avatar. We then can insert a number of different kind of 2D applications or the ballerina as a 3D object into that environment. And then you can add in place on top of that. So you can construct this in any type of representation that you want. And the higher quality of capture that you have, the higher quality of the graphics you'll be able to have. So you'll see the difference between an avatar type render versus looking something a lot more human-like into that environment. And then on top of that, being able to insert real objects into that environment. So not just digital objects, but bringing back real into the environment in the field of view that we see. So when we talk about mixed reality, we really talk about the spectrum. It's not a term that Microsoft made up. It's been around for about 20 odd years. But just kind of helping to understand kind of the landscape and the potential for where we're at today. The whole spectrum between physical and digital, as soon as you start overlaying a digital environment into the real world or a real world and add in digital into that, you then cross into the spectrum of mixed reality. And today, we are at the ground floor in terms of what we're able to do, and it's exciting to be able to see as much proliferation as we've had and the number of use cases that we're seeing, not only for consumer experiences, but also into the enterprise. And essentially, what we envision for mixed reality, which are devices that are requiring the ability to have perception and the ability to understand the environment around, and then to be able to blend any of those mixes of the people, places, and objects that we were talking about previously. And we've got two different ways that we're coming to market with this on the ground floor of this technology. The first, which we're going to talk mostly about today, which is HoloLens, which is essentially coming from a translucent environment where you can see the whole world around you, and then I could insert, little blue Smurfs, instead of your heads around, or, put ballerinas in the environment. It all make public speaking much nicer and more fun for me. Or we can come from the other side of the spectrum, which is more coming from a VR, more immersive headset, but then being able to insert the real world into that environment. And that is something that we're bringing out into market with our OEM partners this year. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that before I then transition into talking a little bit more about HoloLens, the technology and use cases. So in 2017, we will be releasing via our OEM partners that we've got there listed, Acer, Asus, Dell, Lenovo, and HP. Always skilled testing question for me to remember them all in order. Mix the last two up in alphabetical order. But these are essentially VR headsets that are capable of mixed reality. They are tethered. They require PC processing power. And there's a couple of things that are very interesting about what they are going to provide. The first is the overall cost structure is going to be quite reduced. They'll start at $299 and have modest PC requirements. Important because we see these as more consumer type devices, but will bleed into enterprise. So cost is going to, and the lower cost barrier is going to help more devices get out into market, which is great for everybody who is a content developer or an app developer. The second thing is that they will have 6 degrees of freedom and inside-out technology. 6 degrees of freedom, of course, your mobility and ability to move around, forward, backward, side, up, and down. In addition to that, the inside-out means that the markers that often are required for setup and sensors around the room, you're not going to be required to have that. You'll actually have those in the device, meaning that you can just pick up your headset and then take it over to your friends to go play gaming devices, or in a business context, move it around for mobility. And then the third, which is, while these are more immersive type of experiences, it will know, because it's capable of mixed reality, that there are objects in front of you, that there is a floor, that there is a wall. And what that will allow developers to be able to do, well, first of all, what that will allow work health and safety to do is to not get you into trouble, very important, but also what it will do is allow content developers to then use the environment around you. So for instance, if you wanted to have an avatar actually using the podium, it will know that there is a podium here. So that's a little bit about one aspect of mixed reality that's coming out this year, but we are celebrating in a couple of days the 1-year anniversary of HoloLens having shipped in America. We're only about 4 or 5 months ago, I think, when I met Martin back in November for the very first time. We were very eager to start getting HoloLens into the hands of customers and partners in the UK. This is not a consumer piece of kit. This is right now a developer kit, and for commercial customers. It's really important that we deeply understand what business transformation opportunities, how are customers going to use it? How are developers, what do they require, as we also build out the ecosystem, so that by the time that we get to a more mature place, we've done a lot of that groundwork. So for those who haven't tried on HoloLens, again, go check out Theorem. I'm going to give a quick overview in terms of the technology. It's essentially awesome. What it is it's the world's first, and still only shipping, completely untethered holographic computer. Essentially what that means is untethered. You do not need PC processing power. You do not need a mobile phone. You don't need anything. You don't need headphones. Everything that you need is on the device. Essentially, it's a Windows 10 PC that you wear on your head that essentially has a few extra bells and whistles in terms of the technology. Those bells and whistles, an incredible amount of sensors that allow for real-time spatial mapping. VR wants to take you somewhere else. With HoloLens, it wants to know where you're at. It wants to know the world around you. It then also has a holographic lenses. The holographic lenses, obviously, to display holograms in your field of view, but also transparent, so that you can see the whites of people's eyes. I can see Chris. I can see Martin. We can collaborate in person, or have people coming in from around the world also being able to collaborate with us. It has a holographic processing unit because a CPU and GPU alone wasn't going to take all that real-time spatial mapping plus all of those images that it needs to display. We needed to create our own silicon to be able to do that. We can world lock images in place, or you can use physics models to be able to do anything swanky that you want to, and spatial sound. Because everybody knows that to make a hologram feel real, you need the spatial sound. And it's mixed. It means I can hear the world around you, plus I can hear our object being able to project. So what are customers telling us that they are finding real value, real transformative value in the last year that we've been out in America, and then in the last few months in the UK? Definitely creation and design, assembly and manufacturing, the ability to be able to be hands-free, training and development. There are courses being created, new curriculum for things like medical studies, or I just saw holophysics being created at one of the universities, a lot of universities, but also in industry. Doesn't matter if it's kind of Japan Airlines, training on the new Rolls-Royce engines or into the cockpit, tons of horizontal scenarios across training, as you would expect. Collaboration scenarios, one of my favorites, Skype right in the box, the ability to be able to do something like a remote expert mode, where you maybe have a aging workforce, or you may have specialists, and your ability to be able to send an engineer out onto field and have somebody guide them through what they need to be able to do. And then of course we also have wonderful entertainment and brand experience as well. So lots of customers that we're learning from today, and I'm just going to play 2 videos, and then I was going to play 2, and then Martin made me go, oh my gosh, there's another one, and I don't know which one to do. So I'm going to actually ask you guys which ones you want to see. One I'm going to show is some work that Greg Linnet as an architect is doing alongside Trimble. I love it because it's a great example around kind of a breadth of design work. The other one that I have that I'm going to get you to vote on, which is we have Volvo as a automotive company that's been doing a lot of work with us. This example is a showroom example, so very much kind of around design and retail. The other one I had, which Martin made me decide that I was going to ask you on, which is ThyssenKrupp, elevator manufacturer. It's a wonderful remote maintenance and predictive analytics scenario. Not necessarily always kind of so sexy, except it really is sexy. So between Volvo, immersive storytelling, or ThyssenKrupp, advanced analytics and IoT, which one do you guys want? Volvo. Okay, I heard Volvo. All right. So we're going to start off with the first one.
The biggest problem an architect has is getting from the screen into physical space. How do I bring some of that virtual stuff and lock it to a physical model to give us a sense of scale, proportion, form, and space? Microsoft HoloLens is a wearable computer that lets you see holograms mixed with reality. It actually changes the way you think about design. I live here in Venice, California. I teach at UCLA in the old Howard Hughes hangar. We were asked by the American Pavilion at the Venice Biennale of Architecture to be imaginative and show what's coming with architecture. And we were given a mile-long building in Detroit that's been abandoned for 50 years to use our imaginations on. I'd known about the Trimble Microsoft partnership on the HoloLens and was just itching to find the right project to do a pilot with it. So we built a model, but we used HoloLens to get us inside some of those spaces. I didn't know how big our site was compared to corporate headquarters or museums. With Trimble Connect, I can look up and grab different buildings to compare. We could just pull a model and duplicate it and see that it would take 12 Tate Moderns to fill the site. That brought it to life in terms of use. Microsoft HoloLens lets us get inside stuff earlier and experience it, and I can look up and see the volume that I'm in and start to make decisions about how to design it. Without a HoloLens, I would have been making those decisions 3-4 months from now. But with the HoloLens, I'm making those decisions at the moment of inception. In the redesign of the Packard plant, showing the dynamics is something that's very hard to do. HoloLens immediately solved that problem, and it explained why things were the way they were because they were meant for vehicles and people to move around. I've spent my whole life trying to get things from geometry into the physical world. HoloLens is going to bridge that gap between the two-dimensional and the three-dimensional and physical space. And that's architecture. It's a revolution.
Great. All right, last video. And we're not doing ThyssenKrupp, so let's make sure we get the right one here.
Volvo is really a human-centric company. That's the core focus of everything we've done in terms of the products we develop, but also the way we interact with their customers. All people know that we stand for safety, but Volvo is so much more. HoloLens helps us to push the envelope on innovation for our customers.
The HoloLens is a device that you put on your head, and it doesn't intrude in any of the things you do, but it also extends the realities around you.
You can do something you could never do before. You can see the soul of the car. You can strip the body out and stay with the skeleton, and you can play around with it.
The HoloLens can allow our customers to see features, colors, options. So rather than working on the computer, seeing things, you can be part of the experience.
No one understands how car sensors actually works today. Through the HoloLens, you can see how the car perceives you. And then you give me as a human being the vantage point of a sensor. It helps to build a much better trust in this type of systems.
For example, you see a car coming in front of you. The car has features that could aid in that situation. We have a lot of features that we don't necessarily want you to experience it all, but it's part of our proposition. You're buying into the safest car brand in the world.
One of the great things that was said to us by Volvo when we started this was that Volvo loves technology, but only if it makes people's lives simpler. Microsoft HoloLens lets people take imagination and make it real, much more efficiently and in a much more collaborative manner.
HoloLens will not only help us in the car buying process at the dealership, it can evolve into many areas. We think there are many alternative applications of this tool in the future, and Volvo clearly has an aspiration to break out of the pack.
It's cool. It's way cool.